Episode 203, Just Talking, number 17, on its way right now. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Yes, another episode of The Lip, the 203rd episode of The Lip. And, well, I'm going to have to be honest with you. I am sort of filling up the coffers a little bit with shows. I think that I've gotten a lot of things that I wanted to just sort of talk about. And, well, because of that, I may actually have overdone it again. I love it when I overdo it because that just means there's just so much stuff that I want to talk about. And as a result, well, this one show is very possibly going to turn into two. I'll save some of this stuff for later. There's no question that that's probably where I'm heading just by looking at my notes right now. I had planned to do a deeper dive into my cereal box collection next week as this episode airs right now. But depending on how it may play out, that episode about my cereal boxes could end up actually being more than one episode, just based on the looks of the notes that I took already. So who knows? I may actually have shows that might span into the end of May. Yeah, towards the end of May, just based on this Just Talking episode and um, the cereal box episode. Plus, I have another very special group of episodes that I wanted to put together in the beginning of May, so I may have to work around that just a little bit. So, to make a long story short, as I'm talking out loud and thinking out loud, you're going to get this episode that I'm recording right now on the 21st day of March in 2025. You'll see this one April 12th, 2025. And there may be a little leftover content. And that leftover content is going to spill over into May, probably closer towards mid May to the end of May. And by that point in time, I'll probably have had even more extra content to fill this episode with that I'm going to do in the end of May. Another Just Talking episode. That's just the way that's probably going to work out, just as I'm looking at it now. Because I have a few things that I want to talk about for sure. Some that have more, I guess you could say, more close proximity to where I'm recording here in March to April, and it might be a little bit weird if I push some of this stuff a little further out. Although there are a few of these things that I could probably space out for sure, and it wouldn't hurt this episode, and it would, if nothing else, it might actually enhance the next episode. So we'll see how it plays out as I'm going through these episodes. I think it'll be a fun show, one way or another. It'll be interesting, and certainly, the next episode that I do, as far as Hi Phoenix. Yeah, I had to stop just for a minute. My daughter's cat came over for a visit. I think he might want to do a show too. Phoenix. Okay. Now that I've introduced my daughter's cat to you, I will tell you that, yeah, this is going to be Just Talking 17, and very possibly some of the notes that I've got here are going to be in Just Talking 18. And on that note, I'm going to fill in the blanks. Now, as I fill in the blanks with this question, it's real certain to say that part of the question that I'm going to ask is absolutely going to be in the main event. And here comes the question. Just how many Ritas did I go to on the first day of spring to get free water ice? Well, The answer is I went to enough that I'm going to talk about it in the main event. Yeah, I did take my time and go to a few Ritas to get the free water ice, and I'll tell you about how many they are in a couple of minutes. Less, actually. Once again, the question: how many Ritas did I go to on the first day of spring in order to get the free water ice? And the blank is filled in with I'm going to tell you real soon after I ring the bell for the main event, which is right now. It's time for the main event. Just Talking number 17. And that's as good a place as any to start. How many water ices did I get from Rita's? Well, the answer would be 5. Went around here in Philadelphia. Excuse me. And for somebody who ate 5 water ices for free, it's a little weird to be tired, right? But yeah, I took my daughter Maggie and we just went to 5 different Rita's to get free water ice. Now, I knew the day was coming up because every year, first day of spring, here it is, time to get your free water ice. And so what did I do? I mapped out a course of Rita's that were within a couple of miles of my house. Now, it turns out that I found about 12. About 12. But as a result of some very fortunate timing and good planning, I was able to hit 5 of them with relative ease. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are in the area where there are Ritas and are able to go to the get the free water ice in spring, but I can promise you this. Normally, it's after school when I'd pick up the kids and I would go and try to get to a Rita's, and usually just one because the line would be very long. You'd have to wait sometimes half hour, 45 minutes if you're lucky to get the small cup of water ice, and then you would be done because the time it took you to wait to get that one water ice was more than enough for you to want to even consider doing it ever again. Well, at least for the foreseeable future at that point. Guess what happens this day? And I mean, it was exciting. Very, very, very exciting. How in the world would March 20th, 2025 happen to have fallen on a day where my kid's charter school was closed? In all honesty, I don't know why they were closed. I don't care because the timing couldn't have been better. May not happen again. So, got to take full advantage of those opportunities when they show up, right? That's what I thought. And that's what I did. Knowing that I was going to have all the other schools in Philadelphia relatively still in session when the Ritas began opening for their free water ice at 12. What did I do? I took full advantage of it. Went to my very first one at 12. Then I was able to move to 4 other Ritas in the area. 4 others. And the longest we waited was 15 minutes in line. Why? Because all the kids were still in school and they didn't get out until after like 2:30, 3 o'clock. And by then we'd already been to 5. And it worked out so perfectly where the very last one we were at was just in the nick of time. The kids were getting out of school and just on their way to that location. Man, we timed it very well. Hit all the good spots, got different stuff. Me personally, I experienced one of my favorite sets. Like I got 2 black cherry, my favorite flavor. Then I got a green apple, a blue raz, and a mango. I had a very, very good time with that. Now, Maggie, she ended up getting regular cherry, a mix of black cherry and Skittles, of all things. Skittles is a flavor they got now. Then she also got one that was full Skittles, and then she had um, a new flavor called unicorn. She gave me a little bit of it. It was really disgusting. From the perspective that I have, I cannot stand cotton candy. I've may have mentioned it a time or two on the show that I'm from the Jersey Shore area and I was a regular at Seaside Heights. And one of the things that they would do at Seaside Heights was they would actually spin cotton candy. They would make cotton candy right there in front of you. And you could smell the sickly sweet sugar. And even as a kid, I couldn't stand that smell. And then eating it, it was just, I couldn't do it. And the unicorn uh, water ice from Rita's tastes just like cotton candy. So for me, uh, I'm tapping out on that one. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you. But all in all, it was a very good day. But it also gave me an opportunity to map out what I'm going to do on July 11th. Now, what significance does July 11th have when I'm talking about getting free water ice from Wheaties? Well, very simply, July 11th, spelled out in a different way, is 7-Eleven, which, of course, 7-Eleven gives out free Slurpees on 7-Eleven, the small ones. Now, with 7-Eleven, I was able to actually map out a course where I found 10 different 7-Elevens. So be warned, I will be going to visit a minimum of 7 of those 10. And that would they'll only be determined by one singular factor. And that factor would be just how bad the brain freeze is after the first 3. If it's not too bad, I'm definitely going to go and visit a few more, and maybe, just maybe, if the bladder can hold out, I might go ahead and take a run at all of them and get Slurpees from every single one of them. That will be a very fun, but very jittery day, I imagine. It's these little things in life that make me just excited. I like these little things. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to do my best not to double dip and go to the same one twice. Well, like I said, I've gotten 7 off the top of my head that I know where they're at. And I'm going to be on the attack. Some people are like, are you crazy? You're going to just drive around and just get Slurpees? Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And to make matters so much worse for the 7-Eleven, it's like the only time I actually go to get Slurpees on a regular basis anymore. Now, when I was a kid in like 3rd and 4th grade, I would get Slurpees, in fact, younger than that, because the 7-Eleven near my house closed, I believe, when I was in, uh, I want to say it closed when I was in 3rd or 4th grade. But prior to that, 1st grade, 2nd grade, I'd get a Slurpee every week or so, every other week, and I loved it. It was heaven. And then there was many years where I didn't live around a 7-Eleven. And then I came to Philadelphia much, much later in life, and I got spoiled by the fact that they're around. And I attack the Slurpees on the free day now. It's like I gotta make up for all those Slurpees I didn't get for years. And boy, I'm gonna get my Slurpees in, that's for sure. As many as I can from those 10, if not even more. Who knows? If I drive around between right now, like I said, it's March 21st as I'm recording this. Between now and July 11th, I may find another 2, 3 more 7-Elevens that are convenient to go to and just rack up even more Slurpees. That's a very real possibility. A very real possibility. Now, I want to talk to you about another thing that's kind of getting to me. It's somewhat about food, but not really. Pi Day was March 14th. Pi 314. You know, the very interesting thing that happened on this day that was extremely disappointing to me was the fact that there was supposed to be a blood moon on the early mornings of March 14th. And I thought that was going to be just the coolest thing because earlier, it was last year, I was able to catch the blue moon. Went outside, took my camera, took my phone, took a picture and a recording of the blue moon. And I thought that was really neat. And what I wanted to do is create a little collage with the blue moon that I took and with the blood moon. And be like, how about that? I got both the blue and the blood moons together. Now, you see, I was excited about this for a couple weeks after I heard about it, and I thought, okay, I can't wait for it. And as the time started getting closer, I was able to discover when the blood moon was going to be at its peak. And that time was a very ugly and very disturbing 2:30 in the morning or thereabout. So what I did was I set my alarm for 2:25 in the morning. The alarm went off. I got up. I walked outside of my house, got dressed, of course, walked around my entire property, looking up in the sky in full anticipation of seeing this blood moon. Thinking it was going to be a deep red moon. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so cool. Can't wait. Super excited. And what happened when I arched my head up and looked up into the sky? I saw a thick cloud cover. A thick cloud cover. Not just light patchy clouds. No, it was like God decided to pull a blanket over the earth and cover our head so we couldn't see anything above it. So there was such a thick cloud cover, you couldn't see the blood moon no matter what. Now, I was very disappointed by this because I was excited for that entire couple of days beforehand, and then the day of, I was really looking forward to seeing it. I thought it was going to be one of the neatest things that I was going to see. It's kind of cool to see that stuff that happens up there in the sky. It really is. It's really neat. And as a result of that, I mean, man, you can't ask for better than that. But no, 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 no. The cloud cover said no. We are not allowed to see that blood moon. I took a deep breath and realized, well, I walked outside for a good 15 minutes. So I was outside from about 2:30 till about 2:45, and I didn't see it. So I sadly slunk back into the house and threw my head back on the pillow and said, well, at least I'm not as hurt as some other people probably are. What other people am I talking about? Well, I don't know about you or some other things that go on out there, but I can only imagine that some strange cult from somewhere probably had plans for years knowing that this blood moon was going to show up, and they had their black hooded cloaks pressed fully, and they had their sacrificial daggers sharpened to a fine point, ready to to sacrifice someone to a lesser god underneath the blood moon. But but it was all ruined because of the cloud cover. So they had to sheathe their finely sharpened sacrificial knives. They had to let their sacrifice go. They took their finely ironed and cleaned cloaks and just put them back in the closet and hung their heads in shame because they didn't get to do their horrible ceremony to a lesser god that they had planned for a while. They were probably far more heartbroken than I was. So at least I'm not one of them. Since we're going to be continuing this theme of space, which is kind of very interesting because as I'm sitting before you now, like I said, it's March 21st, 2025. There were some astronauts who were apparently stuck in space for about 8 months. And finally, a couple days ago, they were able to send a rocket up there and bring those astronauts home. Could you imagine being stuck in the void and the blackness of space for that long, knowing that it's probably really cool when you first got there and you're going to do all the experiments you needed to do and experience the ability to not be on the planet Earth? That all sounds fun. But then when you think about the fact that you had a specific time that you kind of expected to be back on Earth, and that time came and that time passed, and then months and months started going by, and you're still stuck in space, that seems to be a little unnerving. Just a little bit. Because, boy, people get stuck in an elevator for a couple hours. That's a little hairy. Could you imagine? Could you imagine even just a little bit being stuck in space? Now, the elevator is bad. You're in the elevator, nobody can hear you, and you're in there. But there's two things you got going for you in the elevator. Number one, you're still on the planet Earth. And number two, eventually, with all the people who are probably working in the building or around the building, somebody's going to hear you, notice you, and eventually find you. Now, being in space has some serious problems with that as far as that goes because you are now at the mercy of the people on Earth being able to get a rocket to you in order to save you. You can't just hope that the maintenance man is going to be able to just come around and solve your problem. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't come close to working like that in space. And God forbid some alien ship comes out there and helps you out. Because are you sure it would be help? Or would they be there to sort of take you because you've been in space too long? Either way, those astronauts don't have to worry about any of that because they splashed down safely a few days ago. As I'm recording this, it'll probably be about a month ago as you're hearing this. But they're in good spirits, and as of now, as far as I know, they are all healthy and doing well. And again, like I said, I'm going to keep up with my space um, theory right now because I have a very interesting question that has been bothering me just a little bit in my own mind because it just seems that it would be, I don't know, weird because I don't know why I thought about this, but that's why I call this episode Just Talking. You know how all of our planets are named after Roman gods: Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Uranus, Pluto, all of these, right? If there was actual life on those planets, do you think that they would honor the names that we gave their planet? I don't think they would, because quite literally, if there was other life out there and they have or have not visited Earth, let's just say they haven't, for the sake of argument, these otherworldly beings in our solar system have never visited Earth. That's what we're going to look at. So they have no idea what we're thinking or what we're doing here on planet Earth. I'm pretty sure that the people who live on the planet that we call Saturn don't call their planet Saturn. They probably have some other name that they've given their planet many, many years ago. So for us to be so bold as to call their planet something like that, I understand why we do it. It's for identification purposes. We don't. It's better to call a planet, say Saturn, than planet number 7 or planet number 3. We would be planet number 3 from the sun if you did it that way, right? But for some reason, I just thought about it, and it just seems strange to think that we have our designations for these planets, and if there was actual life on those planets, I believe wholeheartedly, 100%, that they wouldn't adopt the names that we give them. And more curiously than not, what do you think they would call our planet? What do you think that they would call our planet? Because if they don't acknowledge the name that we gave their planet, what name would they give our planet? Or would they not give it a name? Would they just call it, like I was saying earlier, just count back from the sun and just call it, oh, that's the third planet from the sun? Heck, would they even call the sun? That's the questions that I always like to ask these little things. Like, what would those planets or their beings call their planet, and what would they call our planet? How would that all work? I find that absolutely fascinating. And I think that just maybe on just a little note, that could be fun to ponder. Just a little bit. Okay. I think we should come down to earth a little bit now and talk about some, well, since we're talking about things that happened in the early morning when I was talking about missing the blood moon, I'll talk about something that I didn't miss, but other creatures missed. How about that? How about that? There's an old saying, the early bird gets the worm. Now, on March 16th of this year, 2016, Happy Austin Day or John Day, depending on how you look at it, it was tremendously windy here in Philadelphia, and then we had a crazy rainstorm that went into the early morning of St. Patrick's Day, which is March um, March 17th. It's crazy. It was so windy, and it was so windy to the point where I couldn't even take out the trash because the wind would have blew over the trash cans and garbage would have been everywhere and recycles all over the place. So I went with the decision to wait until the morning before I took the kids to school in order to take trash out. And it turned out to be a good decision because there wasn't as much rain and the wind was significantly lower. And as I'm taking out the trash, I'm going down the driveway and I see about a dozen and a half worms. And here it is, 5:30 in the morning, and there's a dozen and a half worms sitting on the ground, just slinking up the driveway, just being worms. Now, typically speaking, on a regular morning at that time, because it's starting to change seasons, the birds were out a lot of times, and you'd hear them chirping, and they'd be around. Now, this is where I find it very interesting. These worms were crawling around real early in the morning, and they were waiting to be eaten, but not one bird was there because there was just a little bit of rain, and the birds just looked at the rain and said, "Hey, we don't want to get our umbrellas out and go get these worms. We don't care that the early worms are out right now. We don't care. We're going to let them sit there. It's too wet, rainy." So, without a doubt, the early birds did not go after the worms because they weren't early birds. They decided to sleep in and forget about the worms. And so this dozen and a half worms was able to just, with free passes, full immunity, go up and down my drive. Had not one bird try to eat them. So the early bird definitely would have gotten the worm had the early bird decided to go after the worms. But it turns out that they didn't even attempt it, not even a little try. And I was a little disappointed by that because there's a lot of birds that show up in my house area, especially this time of year in the spring. I saw the cardinal again yesterday. No, not yesterday. I saw it today. Saw it today. And I actually made a series of paintings that I call the flock series, and it represents all the birds that I've seen that have landed on my fence. I've had a robin, a crow, a blue jay, and a cardinal all land on my fence. And I did my best to sort of capture them on my fence in these four paintings. And the fact that these birds chose not to go after the worms makes me wonder everything that they said about the early bird getting the worm because it's obvious. It's so obvious. This statement is so true and so effective because had there been one early bird, that early bird would have feasted like nobody else because there was just so many worms for them to eat. Their entire family would have been fed and they would have eaten like kings, but they didn't choose to be early birds that day. I don't know what was going through their minds, but then again, maybe that's why they call them bird brains. I don't know. Just all questions that I think could use a little bit of an answer. It's one of them. I don't know. I don't get it. These birds doing weird things. Hmm. Let's see where we're going to go from here. Well, I'll save this one to the end or even the next episode if I have too many. There was a free pancake day at IHOP about a week and a half ago, I guess. And I'm always up for pancakes. And as I told you about Ria's, I'm always up for free too. So that's a good combination. Free and pancakes. Can't go wrong. Strangest thing happened while watching the pancakes on my pile, on my plate. I happened to turn my head just a little bit, to the left, and veer out the window. And what I saw was maybe one of the most fascinating things I've seen. And I've seen a few people post on Reels and both Facebook and Instagram, and they say only in Philly. Well, I got one of those. Only in Philly. I don't know what was going through the guy's mind. I mean, maybe he put a little too much syrup on his pancakes and had to let that energy out. But in the parking lot, which was very limited in space, and a lot of people trying to get in for the free pancakes, this guy did the strangest thing I've seen in quite a while. And that was he chose right then and there to wax his car. Yeah, I mean, full blown, had the little wax thing out, pulled it out, put the little dots on his car, got the microfiber cloth. Mr. Miyagi was standing right behind him. Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. Put the wax on, whole car. He's doing it up great. And I'm watching this, and I'm just in awe because there's just so much to unpack here. There's so much to unpack here. We can start with the fact that, well, the parking lot was pretty full, and people are trying to get in and out. And two cars actually pulled up behind him and were looking to see if he was going to pull out until they noticed that he was waxing his car. And the people were, to use a great word, bewildered to see this guy wax on, wax off. And I'm looking at this, and I don't know if bewildered is a good enough word. I just, like, stunned, shocked, flabbergasted, maybe. Because I could think of 1,000 places a person could wax their car that are not food establishments having a free giveaway that have limited parking space. And my man chose that day, that place, with those conditions to wax his car. And my man missed a couple spots after it looked like he was done. And he went back into his trunk and he got the wax back out. And he hit those spots again because he missed the spots. So not only did he do it, but he missed some spots. And he had the gall to go back into his trunk and get the wax again and wax the spots he missed. Who does that? Like, who does that? I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what was going through his mind. He's like, oh, well, I gotta wax my car. This is a good enough spot. And what kills me is, not to reveal too much of where I'm at, but I can tell you that there was, let me see, I can't even do it in miles. It's got to be in feet. A plaza where there's a parking lot that is lots of spaces in it that never completely fill up. That he could have just driven his car from the IHOP to that parking lot, and if he so chose, he could have sat there all day and completely detailed his entire car, and not one person would have said one word. And he would have had space, time. It would have just been a great day for him. Wax his car there. Man, he could have gone and he could have gotten himself a power washer first, washed his whole car, then dried his whole car off, then applied the wax. And not one person would have said anything, because there would have been space, there would have been time, and nobody would have cared. But no, he picked he picked the one place that was giving away something free, for free, that has a limited amount of spaces and a tight parking lot to begin with on top of that. And that's where this dude decides to go wax his car. My goodness. I know I complain about people who park in front of my house, but just just on a sheer principle, I would have told him to just park in front of my house and do that, because it's just ridiculous. Totally ridiculous to do what he did. And on the ridiculous, I told you about the guy who parks in front of my house, who lives across the street. He's now gained a new bad habit. And this new bad habit is going to be so problematic that I'm expecting that somebody is probably going to beat him within an inch of his life. And that problem is, I made mention all the time that on the street that I live on, there's two sides, two lanes highway, one going one way, one going the other way, and there's more than enough um, shoulder where you can park on either side. And this guy parks against the grain, as I say all the time. He always parks against the grain, and that always just raises my blood pressure. Like, why would you park on that side of the street, my side of the street, and park the wrong way? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Parking in the wrong direction, parking going on the wrong direction on my side of the street. Now, like I told you, the guy lives across the street, not too far away, where he has to cross one major highway in order to get to the apartment complex. And so this guy, who clearly must be suffering from CTE, because if he's not, there's no other way that I could think of that you would do this, because I've put together all the things that he does wrong, and I've sort of made a highlight reel of just stupidity here. Now, like I said, he parks against the grain. That is enough to make my skin crawl. But he parks on my side of the street, literally in front of my bedroom window. I can see this guy's park. Now, the fact that he's parked against the grain, which is a problem for me, because every other car that parks there parks in what would be the correct way, going forward, so that you can take your car and go straight forward, and you're in the right lane and you're moving down the street. Now, like I said, I wasn't paying this any mind for some stupid reason. This is my fault. If he had parked the way he parks, against the grain on the other side of the street, he would be facing the correct direction of the street. And and he would actually not have to cross one extra street in order to get to his apartment, because being on my side, he now has to cross that street, and then he has to go across the street. So he's giving himself extra steps. He's got to walk a little further. But this is his new bad habit. Excuse me. His new bad habit is worse than parking against the grain and on my side of the street. This is now the second day in a row that I've noticed him doing this. And each time, I can't believe what I'm seeing, to the point where I'm sort of pretending that he's not doing it, but let's face it, he is. He then now has pulled out of his street, not of the street, pulled out from the parking spot across my house, next to my house, where he's against the grain, and he'll just go straight ahead, and he'll stop in the middle of the street. Now, mind you, he's facing the wrong direction when he leaves the space in front of my house. So he pulls off facing the wrong way, and he parks in the middle of the street the wrong way. He then puts on his hazard lights. He gets out of his car, leaves his car parked in the wrong direction on the street, goes back up to the curb by my house where he drops something. And this is 2 days in a row he's done this. So I don't know if maybe that screw that was loose in his head may have fallen out and he had to go get it. I don't know. But he then retrieves whatever it is. This is 2 days in a row now. Gets back in his car facing the wrong direction, and then he proceeds to carefully get into the right lane that he's supposed to be in and drives away. Now, today when he did it, there was in fact a car coming towards him in the correct direction while he's sitting in the wrong direction. And he still takes his sweet time. This is why monster trucks are not street legal. Because if they were, I would own one. And if I owned one and I saw this guy doing this, I would proceed to get into my monster truck, drive down the road, and just crush his car because it just needs to be done. Just needs to be done. I don't know why I let these weirdos raise my blood pressure, but, well, that's what they do. And not even raise my blood pressure. It's more like they turn me into the Red Hulk, which I've seen in live action. And I loved every second of that movie. And there are people who didn't like it, but I don't care. I enjoyed it. And the most important part about me enjoying seeing the Red Hulk was the fact that, well, I had been talking the Red Hulk up for years. And then we got him. And then we got him. Yes, we got him. And I loved every second of it. Um, Looking at the clock, I guess I'll go over this and then I will, in fact, have some, like I thought I was going to have some to save for another episode. And I'm going to keep those other ones saved for another episode. We're not even going to mention them because they will be in the next episode. But going back to the Red Hulk, Captain America, Brave New World, saw it, loved it. There are people who don't like it, but are still part of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just remember, it's a part of the story. It all connects. I'm not going to give any spoilers to anybody who hasn't seen it, but yes, there is a massive connection to a movie that many other people didn't like, and it's in that movie that is connected to Captain America, the Brave New World. You gotta catch it. Gotta. I'm gonna talk real briefly about two other movies that I saw in the last month or so that I recommend strongly, and I am not going to give you any spoilers. Kraven the Hunter. As the wrestling fan that I am, here I go again. I always put something wrestling in this, right? I have to say that in order to fully appreciate Kraven the Hunter as a comic book fan, Marvel fan, You have to suspend your disbelief and look at the movie for what the movie is. Don't think about it in the terms of the comics completely. Because if you think about it in that regard, you might get a little upset. So focus on the movie for the movie. Just kind of like what I do for Venom. Focus on the movie for the movie, and you will be fine. If you focus on a movie for what the movie is, you will like the movie. If you harp on the fact that there's stuff that's inaccurate, I mean, it's going to bother you. It really will. It's going to make you think, just like, oh, what was that other one? Seems like Spider Man's bad guys have these weird movies that are coming out, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know about this. But if you look at it from the movie itself, it's a decent movie. It really is. Um, I can't know why. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank, and I want to finish this episode. But the vampire movie that DC did, that Marvel did rather, excuse me, um, one of Spider Man's bad guys. I just can't think of his name off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But the movie itself, it was what it was. But when you put it in context to the general Marvel universe, you might not be the happiest. But if you look at it as a movie, it's solid. Then there was Juror number two. Whoo! Personally, I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. Good concept. And that's what gets you, the good concept. If you haven't watched Juror number two, strongly advise Juror number two. And then a movie that is what do you call it? Critically acclaimed this year, Conclave. Now, I always like those suspenseful movies, and I always love anything that has to do with the Vatican and the secrets that potentially lurk there or around the Vatican. So I really loved that movie too. Plus the fact that one of the main characters is Lord Voldemort, that just made it that much more interesting for me. Now, I even went one step further than I had planned in this, and I even added a couple things, like the astronaut. I didn't even plan on adding that, so instead of talking about a couple other things that I could have added to it, those will be on the next um, Just Talking episode. So for now, I'm going to ring the bell, and we're going to go into the Spear of the Week. Now, the only person who could be the Spear of the Week this week is that dude who parks on my side of the street and lives in an apartment complex down the road. Because until today, I really didn't fully appreciate how aggravated I am getting the fact that he parks against the grain. Because when he pulls off and he's parked against the grain, he has this terrible tendency, like I said, to get out of his car and leave his car parked in the middle of the street going in the wrong direction. And by proxy, what makes it even more messed up is he's generally doing that within a hair of my driveway. So let's say I had to be somewhere when he does this stupid thing. He's now parked not in just in front of my driveway, but he's parked in the wrong direction in front of my driveway. So it just makes things just even dumber than they have to be. Without a doubt, he's the spear of the week, and I don't know if it's just a Roman Reigns spear or if it's an Achilles spear where I throw a spear at him. one way or another, he's getting some kind of spear. That's a fact. Spear of the week, weirdo who parks outside the window of my house, bedroom door specifically. Okay, time for a question. No. Okay. Here's a very interesting question. Does looking on the bright side help? And my answer to that is no. Looking on the bright side doesn't help because when it comes to certain things, the bright side isn't necessarily that good anyway. For example, one of my favorite podcasts is Jim Cornette's Experience and Jim Cornette's Drive Through. And he said something several times, and it would be the equivalent of looking at the bright side. Now, the question is very simple. Does looking on the bright side help? Well, what Cornette would say a lot of times is it's kind of like being the nicest guy in jail. Is there really a bright side to the nicest guy in jail? No, it really isn't. It's like, okay, I just got into a car accident and killed 3 people. Well, at least I'm still alive. I mean, really? Is that is that a bright side? Because for no, if at the very least, the 3 people that you killed have friends and family. It's not good, and maybe they could have been in the car with you. Not good. Then there's a thing called survivor's guilt, which I would very much hope that someone in that situation would certainly be feeling. Um, very few things, and high stress, very few things that would happen to be bad have a bright side to them. It's weird to say that like that, but maybe the question is contexting the fact that the way I'm thinking of the question is that there is something bad that has happened, and you look on the bright side of the bad thing. Now, if you're just going through general life and there's just talking about the bright side versus the bad side, well, who wouldn't want to look on a positive? But I'm looking at the question in a certain way where it's like, well, to me, it seems as if something bad has happened. And to look on the bright side of the bad thing, I don't know. I don't think there is much to look at on the bright side of a bad situation like that, except maybe, like I said, no, I can't see anything because from that perspective, it just feels as if you're looking at it lightly. I think that if there is a bad situation, the bright side doesn't seem to be as bright. I think that if there is a bright side to a bad situation, it's maybe being able to work through the bad situation and get to the bright side. Because at that point, you would be at the dark side, moving towards the light. But to see the bright side right away. It's not always clear. So I'm not sure if I necessarily am answering this question in the way that it was meant to be presented, but I'm definitely answering it in the way that I feel that it's presented, if that makes any sense. So, we're going to begin to shut down the show. You can always catch me on Instagram at Philip Henderson 5102. Facebook group, the LIP Facebook group. Join us. There's always room for one more. Clearly, I need you to like and subscribe to at Phil the Lip, my YouTube channel. I'm out there on TikTok and on X, somewhere to be seen. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that there will be a Just Talking number 17, not part 2, but like I said, I had some extra notes here, so expect to see a part that's going to be taken from this to be in Just Talking 18. That's a fact. I got at least a couple that I left on the burner here. One of them is, I'm going to say, fairly interesting enough, but well, the other one, I don't know if I'm going to save that for a story episode. I might have to really consider that, because if I told it as a story, it would be even more funny than if I made it on Just Talking. So, no. Options, options. This one, in fact, as I'm thinking about it, it might actually make for a better story. So, yeah, you won't hear this one on a Just Talking. You'll hear this one on a story. That's the way I'm going to roll with it. That's going to be on a story episode. If all things work out, I will be telling a story next week as you're listening to this show. It'll be a more complete version of me talking to you about my cereal box collection. Now, I've mentioned it on many occasions, but I've come across a major milestone in my cereal box collecting, and I kind of thought it was going to happen before the month was out, as far as March goes, and it did happen earlier in March. And as a result of that, I'm going to put this episode out on next week as you're listening to this, which would be the 19th of, 19th of April will be my definitive story about my cereal box collection, because it's deeper than just I woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to collect cereal boxes." There's a lot to unpack, as the great Conrad Thompson would say, a wrestling genius podcast, uh, empire. I would say he's a podcast emperor. And when it comes to my cereal box collection, there is a lot to unpack. And I'm going to tell you that this cereal box collection of mine is one of my truly most prized possessions, things that I own. And boy, it didn't start that way. It absolutely didn't start that way. But it's a story that over time, my cereal box collection became more and more and more in both quantity and special to me because of situations that revolve around my cereal box collection. And if I, well, I'm going to tell you that to where it is right now and to where it started and to all the spots in between where this collection could very easily not have existed. Very easily. There's some definite spots that could have ended my cereal box collection a couple of times and a couple of times hard. And somehow, some way, it was not meant to be. And my collection stands strong even as we speak. But speaking of things that are standing strong, that are a part of a collection, the work of art that I have for the background of this episode has one of the most thought provoking names of any piece of art you will ever see. It took me a long time to consider what to call it. To make a long story short, this is the last piece of art that I made in 2024. Thus, I call it the last of 2024. Yep, a little over and under work on some of the bars that are going laterally versus the ones that are going horizontally. But it's the last thing I did in the month of December of 2024, so it's the last of 2024. And on that note, I believe that it is time for the words of wisdom. All right, the words of wisdom are for the one person who I know needs them more than anybody else. And I'm going back to that guy who parks in front of my house in the area where I can see him out of my bedroom window. Those words of wisdom are as followed to this guy. My crystal ball is out of the shop and works great, but I don't need it to tell you what is going to happen to you next. You keep parking in front of my house against the grain and then driving your car on the wrong direction of the street. Eventually, it's going to end badly for you. Just one of these times, somebody's going to be looking at their phone. They're going to be not paying attention when you're parked on the when you park your car on the wrong direction of the street in the middle of the street. Somebody's going to run into you. It's just obvious. And at that spot where I'm at here, there are. I've been waiting, which sounds terrible, in anticipation for accidents to happen. And in this area, in the last less than 12 months, I've actually, unfortunately, gotten my wish, and I've seen like 3 accidents directly across the street from my house. And they were actually caused because people couldn't see because the cars parked on either side of them, and they just went when they shouldn't have, or they anticipated going, but it didn't work out for them. You're sitting right there in the middle, so when somebody's not paying attention, they're gonna hit you head on. And for lack of a better term, you're gonna deserve it. So once again, the words of wisdom to you are: my crystal ball is out of the shop and works great, but I don't need it to tell you what is going to happen to you next. That's all I got for you today. And more importantly, it's all I got for you this week. And I can't wait to talk about cereal boxes next week. But as far as this show is concerned, my name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.